Yeah.
Thank you very much. Lovely, thank you very much. Just want to welcome you to our Economic Success panel tonight at Broadland District Council. I'm Councillor Jo Copplestone, and firstly I would like to receive any declarations of interest under procedural rule number 8, please. Leah, are you going to do a roll call or?
Chairman, I'm happy to do a roll call if that's okay with you, and we can confirm attendance and any declarations of interest.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that's Councillor Beadle.
Present.
Any declarations, Mr. Beadle?
No declarations of interest.
Thank you. Councillor Bullman.
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Catchpole.
Present and no declarations.
Councillor Copplestone.
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Crotch.
Present and no declarations.
And Councillor Mancini Boyle.
Present, no declarations.
Thank you, Chairman. That completes the roll call and declarations of interest.
Lovely. Thank you. Dawn, could I have any apologies for absence? I know that Councillor Karen Vincent has sent her apologies.
Yes, Chairman. So in addition to Councillor Vincent, we also have Councillor Hartley.
Lovely. Thank you very much. If we could firstly move on to the minutes from our meeting on the 22nd of July. If we just look through those, page 5, page 6, 7. And I just wanted to add on minute number 24 that I have a meeting booked on the 21st, which is next week, from the Better Broadband for Norfolk team and Karen O'Kane, and I will hear further about their report and the details of contract 3. Next is page 8, 9 and 10. And just on the confidence campaign, I just wanted to inform members that the tourism adaptation grant pot is closing, as we have had enough applications to spend the full allocation of the grant funding, and that came from Chloe Griffin, our tourism officer. Also, I have been in discussions with officers about the confidence campaign at Reefham, and Officer David Disney is leading on that now, and they are working with the Town Council and intend to appoint consultants Ingram Pinnock to begin local stakeholder engagement meetings this week at further developments in the marketplace. So are there any questions on either of those things, please? No? Lovely. Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move on to agenda number 5, the future of community grants. And I think Kerry is going to present this. Please, Kerry, thank you.
Sorry, Chairman, could I just intervene just very quickly there? Could we just,
yes,
by a show of hands, indicate that members are happy to endorse those minutes and for the Chairman to sign them as a correct record? Let's just see everyone. That's excellent. Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that. If we move now to Kerry Gallagher, please. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to share my screen so that you can see a presentation. I'm only on my laptop, though, so it does mean I won't be able to see you. So if you have a question, please shout at me as opposed to waving your hand at me. That'll be most easy. I'm just going to do this now. Okay, can everybody see that screen now?
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, let's make this a full screen. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to talk to everybody about the community grant scheme. I'll whiz through. You guys will have seen the report. These are the recommendations that are listed on there, covering what we're going to talk about this evening, which is some changes to the member-led grant scheme that are being proposed, a discussion about the introduction of a startup grant, which is going to be linked to the new Community at Heart lottery. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to give an update on where we are with that, and really for members to endorse, hopefully, a much more whole council approach to community funding than perhaps we're able to do at the moment. So cracking on, key points really from the report. Over the years in Broadland, there's been several grants that have been available to the community. At the moment, the member-led funding is really the one that remains in situ. We do, however, also manage an external grant, which is paid for by monies from the Social Isolation Fund, which is county council funding. That's being managed by my team, and that's for groups who are struggling to keep their groups going, as it kind of says on the tin, for anyone that needs a little bit of something just to keep things moving. It is an incredibly difficult time for community and volunteer groups. In many ways, a lot of the groups that we had out there have been unable to meet. In a slightly different way, it's also been an incredibly positive time for community groups. So we know that people have come together in just the most incredible way to support each other during COVID. And I think that the legacy of that will go on an incredibly long time. But certainly those groups who would have met previously, and off the top of my head, I'm thinking of kind of the traditional ones, you know, the groups of people that come together for some kind of craft or some kind of sporting activity. They're all really struggling at the moment with all the government guidelines that are in place. So it is important that we always review our grants to ensure that we're meeting the needs of recipients, but really important to kind of keep up with the market, so to speak. So a day doesn't pass really where a grant doesn't close or open. They're really a fast flowing thing that changes daily or certainly weekly. So it's important that we always review what we're doing, especially at the moment. There's so much money for different, there's always money out there. It's just if you're looking for the right thing, really. So it's important that we keep up with what's going on to make sure that our grants are as relevant to our community as possible. There's a nice bit of jargon for you here. ABCD, asset-based community development, sounds very exciting, but it's really at the heart of what we do in Broadland, which is to put the community at the heart of everything that we think about. That's why I can see Councillor Mancini Boyle's behind her, talking about the community lottery. She's been very on brand this evening for us. But the community is at the heart of what we do. And ABCD, asset-based community development, is all about when you're looking to do something in a community, you look at what's already there. You don't look at what's missing. And this is all about building on the capacity that's already present. And our grant scheme really should reflect this. And as I go into this a little bit more, you'll see that perhaps we've got some potential areas to make changes. Spend should have a clear purpose. We should be looking at using the spending to reduce demand on our services ultimately. I run communities and early help, and really the community's function is all about how do we reduce the impact of what our community can do on our services. So we know that if people are well connected to each other and they support each other, there's a lot less chance that they'll come to formalised services for support, and it's really important that grants support that. And then finally, an area that we could really have some improvement on is around the evaluation of grants and what their impact is. So straight into the member-led funding. Nobody shouted at me to stop yet, so I'll carry on. We have had the member-led funding, and not for a huge amount of time in the Broadland area, but there has been a lot of feedback given, which is incredibly helpful. Members who are using the scheme have given us some thought on where things could be improved and what needs to change. So what we hope this will do is reflect this and what we've been told. So underspend is a concern for some, and conversely, some other members want some more money. So we've got sort of a 50-50 here. Overall, though, the fund, it remains underspent. It's quite natural that this year that's the case because not many people have been able to do anything. The third point here around promotion of the scheme, it does rely solely on the member. And this goes back to the point that I made earlier. That kind of, what we don't want to do is treat our communities incredibly passively. And what our current community, our member-led scheme, absolutely relies on is the member getting out there and seeing people, and absolutely that's the right thing to do. Members know our community better than anybody, but what we would like to think about is some promotion of the scheme so that community groups can find out about it a little bit with a little bit more ease and can approach the member and speak to them and inform them of what they're doing, taking that complete reliance on the member knowing everything, because some of these groups are really tucked away and small and are doing incredible things, but they don't shout about it. They don't go to parish council meetings. They don't have a Facebook page. They don't hold fates or anything like that. They're operating incredibly well, but on a much smaller scale. So they're not always so easy to find. So the proposal that we would like to discuss with members today is to keep the grant amount the same. That's £23,500. At the moment, members have £500 each, and that's allocated per member. Everyone's got that to spend up to their limit, and we encourage members to spend to that limit. The changes that are being proposed is that effectively it becomes one big pot that members can apply for up to the tune of £1,000. So as you can see, that could lead to half the members getting £1,000 and half of them getting effectively nothing for their community. So it makes it a little bit more movable. I keep using the phrase kind of ebb and flow. So in some wards where members don't need any money because it's just not necessary in that year, that money could flow into another ward where it is more necessary at that time. So it enables that the money to be spent where it's more effective, spent where it's needed the most. We'd look that there would be a minimum spend of £50 and a maximum of £1,000. So members could choose to fund an awful lot of £50 projects. They could choose to say, actually, I want to give all of my, I'd like to apply for the £1,000 to do this. It's on a first come, first served basis. So it adds a little bit more of a rush, I suppose, to get the money spent. That's not to say it's not all going to go straight away, though. That's not a problem. And one of the changes, kind of referring to what I was talking about earlier, is that the community could put in a request. It says here we can request the fund online, but what we're talking about here is the community having an opportunity to go onto our website, put their details down, and it would be, who they are, what their contact details are, what their group is, and what they'd like the funding for. And that can go to the member. That means that our communities who are, we're all working in a world now where we're flexibly working, community groups who are working on this at 10 o'clock at night could put in a request to a member, whatever time of day is necessary for them to be contacted by the member. What this doesn't suggest is that communities just apply for the fund and they receive it without contacting the member. That's quite the opposite. This just gives the community a chance to effectively wave their hand at the member and say, we're here and we'd like you to learn a bit more about us, and this is why we'd like some of your funding. So just increasing those lines of communication, really. And I've already mentioned the potential to do a little bit more branding for the scheme and add to that promotion. So that, in a nutshell, is what I'm talking about in terms of member-led funding. Just the other couple of bits that I wanted to go over today. The Community at Heart Lottery launches on the 5th of November. And when we say a launch, that is for the good causes. That's anyone that is going to effectively be part of the lottery. That launches for them on the 5th of November, where they'll come along and find out what it means to be a part of it. So they'll learn about how to set up their own little web page on the lottery website, how to sell tickets, how to get people involved, and then what will happen when tickets start to be sold from January 21. For members that aren't aware, this lottery allows groups to raise money for a variety of things. There really is not a huge amount of restriction, but what it does, which is quite different to other grant funding or to other funding that's available, is allows them to pay their day-to-day costs. And as we've said, at the moment, they're incredibly hard to come by because a lot of the day-to-day costs are actually achieved by people taking part in the group, and that's not able to happen at the moment. What happens with the Community at Heart Lottery is that 10% of that ticket price goes into a pot which is held by us as a council. We don't yet have a finalised idea for what that 10% will be spent on. Neither do we actually know how much that's going to be. We know that there's an awful lot of enthusiasm and engagement around the Community at Heart Lottery, and we'll certainly see how high that motivation is when we launch on the 5th of November, but there's plenty of time for people to find out more about it, and it will continue to build. So we've got a little pot of money there, which we hope will generate a good income for us as a council that we can then reinvest into the community. Which brings me on neatly to this proposed idea of a startup grant. So I've already mentioned member-led grants, which support constituted groups, quite formal groups. I've mentioned the Keep It Going grant, which is all about groups that might be struggling. The idea with this grant is a little bit more light touch for people who have come together, got a couple of friends, they'd like to give a group a go. They want to see if it's viable before they get into the formalisation of things like constitutions and having all the different bits and pieces that are required. The proposal is that we give them a little bit of money, a bit of seed funding to give their idea a try, really. What often happens with this kind of funding is that what you end up giving that group, more importantly than the money, is advice and guidance and a bit of a gateway to other funding that might be available to them when they're more formalised. This really is light touch. This is about giving some money over and saying, do you know what, if this goes wrong, if this doesn't work, at least you've tried it. We know that it's a good thing or it's not. What's also quite clear from other places that do grants like this is that often people don't apply for the full £300. If you think about a lot of the groups, they're incredibly simple, bringing people together. It's not uncommon to see people apply for £50 for a little bit of room rent, some tea, some coffee, and some biscuits, some nice ones, hopefully, for people to kind of come along and get together and discuss their ideas and see if it will go forward. What we would like is that there would be the potential for a little bit of budget for that to see how it goes, with the hope that the lottery funding, that 10% of money, could ultimately be used to fund this grant. So that's that part of it. So in summary, we've gone over a lot of these points. We're talking here about changing the member-led funding stream to make it more accessible to people when it's required. Accessible in many ways, whether that be the amount of money that's available or even how the community contacts the members. A greater emphasis on council-wide approach to community funding. All of these bits and pieces require support from different elements and different teams. And I'm in discussion at the moment with some colleagues around the greater use of the community infrastructure levy, which is already incredibly good in Broadland. It's just, how do we build those links even better so that when we're talking to community groups within the communities team who need those bigger amounts of funding, how can we have a more streamlined approach to get them to places where they can talk to people about SIL, but also perhaps business grants and other bits and pieces that are available to them? Because a lot of groups start in one way, they veer, they do other things, and we just want to make sure really that people are helped to kind of be guided through that journey as much as possible. All of this requires absolutely no changes to the ground rules. Everything's within that already. This isn't about changing who can apply and all of that sort of thing. We talked about the Community Heart Lottery, that's incredibly exciting. Talked about the starter grant, and also all of this hopefully will enable us to ensure that grants are more impactful about the issues that are present in our communities. By allowing the community to come to us, we would hope that we will have better access to community intelligence than perhaps we do now. And that is everything. I shall stop sharing.
That was absolutely brilliant, Kerry. that was very good, Kerry. Thank you very much for that. Very comprehensive. Trudy, would you like to ask the first question?
Yeah, it's just a couple of thoughts, actually. Like everything, all the suggestions regarding the grant, other than you'll probably think, unsurprisingly, the £1,000 increase, the up to 1,000. My thoughts are there. If I just think that could cause some conflict between members, I really do. So I'm not keen on raising that to 1,000. I think we should leave it at the 500, especially as we've only had 1 year at the moment of having the grants anyway. We're now in the 2nd year. And my other couple of thoughts are, what you could ultimately look at, any unspent money from that could go to the startup grants. And my other thought of the lottery, the 10% pot could maybe go each year rather than have sort of a big conversation every year. Could it possibly go to the chairman's charity that year? Or you could switch it around so that what's left from the grants go to the chairman's charity and you still do the startup from the 10% pot. Either which way, really. But they're just my initial thoughts on looking at it. But I do think the £1,000 might cause a problem.
I know that this caused some confusion when I've talked to other people about it, so I just want to double check if that's okay, what you're saying. So the proposal definitely isn't to put all members up to £1,000. It's that they can, you're happy with that. It's just that you don't like the idea that they can access more and others would be able to access none.
Yeah, I think that could, because you could get 9 months into the year and somebody suddenly wants their 500 and somebody else has already had it.
That is true.
Yes, Trudy, I seem to agree with you. That was something I wanted to point out, because the grant fund is only 23,500 still. I feel that those, you know, in some wards there's sort of more than one member and they could have maybe up to 2,000 or 3,000 for their community, where someone in a smaller community could miss out completely. So I understand the fairness of that. Mike, you wanted to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of points to just to reflect on that. With the underspend, what we are looking to do, and as the AD with all my budget managers, is you know, you've got this money here, you really need to try and spend it. So I fully agree with Councillor Mancini's comments, but where I don't want us to think about an underspend, I want to think about spending it, and that's the push to be able to do that. I think that's quite important to. And the other point, the other 10% extra, where we've seen with the lotteries around the country, when you're encouraging people to join the community lottery and spend money, yes, the big 50% goes to your local group, and that's obviously the big driver. But where I think we see some of the really good wins is when you have that 10%, it's going to something that resonates with the community. And I think it's just making that point for discussion, really. So, you know, what would resonate with Broadland residents? You know, would it be loneliness? Would it be getting people into a job? Would it, you know, there's some kind of things which just grip people and think, yeah, you know, that's a good use of my money. So I think in terms of you know, a policy committee, that's worth reflecting on that, about, you know, where we would try and get that marketing across to say that, you know, this is, if I give a pound of my money, I know that 50p is going to go into my local group, which is absolutely great. But 10% is to go into something that resonates with me, and that's probably worth thinking about. That's all I'd like to make, Jim.
Thank you very much, Mike. Councillor Bullman, you've got your hand raised.
Yes, I'd just like to, I think, agree with what's already been said, if I may. I'm not comfortable about there being a scramble for money for up to £1,000 and some members losing out. I actually don't have any difficulty at all in finding enough for my member-led grant, and I would feel very frustrated if 9 months into the year, suddenly, yes, I have a project that I think is excellent, and I find out that there's no money available for me to bid for. So I'm more comfortable with the status quo. If you want to make some amendments in order that we do ensure all the money is used, perhaps, for example, at 3/4 through the year, the members who haven't spent their money could be alerted to that and told that if they don't spend it within a certain time, it would go to other members who do have projects available. Would that be a reasonable compromise?
Thank you, Councillor Bullman. Yes, I quite agree with that. Councillor Trudy Mancini Boyle, do you want to just come back, and then we've got Councillor Crotch?
Just another thought. I think at the end of the 12 months, if there's money left, could the team not then look at the communities that have applied online and look at that option to use the funds up? Or, as I said, use that towards startup grants within Broadland, and so that the member has got their full 12 months to have a look at where they would like to spend the money.
Are you happy for me to respond? I think you're right. I think the idea of people, so what should happen if members are in agreement, if somebody applies online, what would immediately happen is that those details will be sent directly to that member. So they would simply receive the information of a group that's interested in talking to them. So I think that where members where some members have had people apply and they can't afford to pay them out of their £500, I think that's probably a really, you know, good suggestion to say, unfortunately your ward member at the moment can't fund it, but if it gets to X date in the year, and there's an underspend across the whole budget, we would look back at those people who have been unfortunately unable to access funding. If members are happy with that kind of proposal, then I'd be more than happy to work that up and see how we could make that happen. That seems like a compromise between the two. I can see nodding heads. This makes me happy. I'll take that as a something to look at.
Thank you very much, Kerry. Councillor Crotch.
Thank you. Yeah, I won't repeat what everybody said, because I'm pretty much, again, just in agreement with all that's been said. I think the important thing for the grants about keeping it at the 500, so members are not sort of bidding against each other, to Councillor Boyle's point there, really is, when it was originally launched, the aim of this was to help a lot of small groups, to the £50 here and there. And I think it's the points that have been raised that, you know, if members suddenly have something in month 9 or 10, it's really great just to give that small £50 to group, because it makes a huge difference. And actually, if somebody's already bid their thousands in big projects earlier in the year, that then wouldn't be available. So, and given that not all members have spent the full 500 already this year, then I see no reason why it should be any need to increase it to 1,000. But the rest of the principles totally supportable.
Thank you, Councillor Crotch. I think Councillor Catchpole, did you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm a bit bemused really as to why this is a priority right now. So for this year, we've only just recently been told we have this £500. So obviously we're all promoting it as we did last year, and so I'm assuming, although I might be wrong, that this paper was referring to next year and setting a budget for next year, because I know we've been very active as a group and spent on our local communities the grants that have been available in the main. So I wouldn't like to see this year's budget be changed. And the reason why we asked about the £1,000 per member was because, to me, there is more need. And if we are active as councillors, we will satisfy our communities and help them more if we have £1,000 than we can with a £500 limit. Last year, I helped 3 different groups from the £500. But there were many more that I could have helped. So I just feel like we've only just got this going. And if there happens to be some underspend, well, yes, we need to decide what to do with that. But I really wouldn't like to change what we're doing already, apart from to put the budget up to £1,000 per member. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Catchpole. Mike, do you want to come back to Councillor Catchpole? And then I think we've got Councillor Beadle.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, and 2 elements of that. The £1,000 per member, I mean, it is within the gift of Cabinet and Council to make that decision. I would just say, as I would as the budget manager, that we are no longer in a position of and it's all. So, you know, we can, if we raise it to £1,000, then we've got to take 23,500 out of somewhere else, because, you know, we haven't got an end of spot of money. But I just wanted to point that out. But obviously, that's within the gift of members to decide. And absolutely, we're looking at this. This is an initial policy discussion to go through to Cabinet and then for Council at the end of the year. So we are looking for next financial year. So this year is absolutely set as where we want to do. And, you know, recognising the problems we've got with obviously our communities working now. So,
in terms of timing, Councillor Catchpole, it was a request that we would review it at this point within the year. It's quite obviously there's other stuff here other than the Memberled Funding, but it's quite positive to just double check that everything's good, everyone's happy, and it's really helpful feedback from you all that you think it's working well. So in a way, that's probably the best feedback we can get, is that you're happy with it, as opposed to everything being terrible, which is nice.
Lovely. If we could go to Councillor Beadle now, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've never known a finance manager to be profligate, so I understand where the finance manager is coming from. They are always very careful. They're always on the downside. But nevertheless, our finance department has actually been so successful on being on the downside that, according to the media, our balances have gone up in spite of COVID. So, or maybe because of it, I don't know. So, and in the scheme of things, of the expenditure of the district council, another £500 per member is not a huge amount of money. And I'm sure the council could actually raise it to £1,000 if the cabinet and the council so desire, and I would support that. May I say, historically I'm used to a proper grant scheme whereby you get voluntary organisations bidding for a capital grant, and it was often sort of £80,000 to £100,000 grant for small, budget for small organisations. So it's much more significant than this, and I'm sorry those days have gone, because we did do a lot of good from the district council in grant aiding things like new kitchens and extensions, and by giving the Broadlands a seal of approval on a scheme, it enabled them to go to other grant aiding organisations and say the local district council is putting their hand in the pocket and grant aiding it, and therefore they were more successful, and it was a way of leaving out money. So yes, I do think we ought to be up to £1,000. It's not the sort of scheme I'm easy with, may I say, the current one, or maybe even happy with. It's what we've got, and I will try and make it work. But it's not a scheme I would start off with a blank piece of paper, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Beadle. If you just notice in the chat that Councillor Mancini Boyle has said that this is not what is on the table. We have 23,500 for our member grant scheme, and as Mike has clearly said, if more of this, if we want more of this, it will have to come from a different budget. As Kerry outlined, we already have the startup grant for small for small projects, and also the SIL infrastructure money for larger applications. Kerry, do you want to just?
I was just going to reiterate that point really. Obviously there are groups that need bigger amounts of money, and that is where things like the SIL SIL money is able to help with that now. And there is an awful lot of money out there, not just from us as a district council, but just out and about. You only go to Screwfix or One Stop now, and there's community grants available to everybody. What we know is that the smaller grants that we're able to provide as a district council are often incredibly helpful to groups, because all that money that was invested years ago for things like new kitchens and village halls and that kind of thing has enabled buildings to exist that smaller groups are now able to use, and that's those smaller groups that need the money, and they need only small amounts for bits of equipment and things like that. And I think people live in a slightly different way. A lot of groups are much more virtual than they used to be, and people have their own equipment, and those sorts of things have changed. So I think that whilst there is definitely a need for refurbishment and things like that, the need for those larger grants is slightly lessened for us as a district council to provide, not least because it's perhaps not so necessary anymore, but also because there is that money available, and capital money is much easier to get your hands on out and about in other settings than it is to get your hands on that more sort of smaller pots of money.
Thank you very much, Kerry. So if there's no further questions, I'd probably like to draw your attention to the recommendation on page 17, which talks about changes to the member-led ward grant system. As we've already said, many of the councillors today would like the £500 ring-fenced for each member, and it was a very sensible suggestion to have sort of a cut-off date. So I'm going to suggest the 31st of January, because I think the the grant scheme goes up to the 1st of March every year, which would give other members use of an underspend every year. I don't know what you all think about that. Councillor Catchpole, did you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Chair. That makes me confused. Are we now talking about this current financial year that you'd like to change it to the 31st of January? There's one other question that I'd like to raise on 3.31, and that is, it says that there was feedback from members. Could I ask how that feedback was collected, please? On page 14, 3.1. Thank you.
That feedback, sorry, Chairman, if I may. That feedback is just the community's ongoing chat with members as they've engaged with Kerry's team. So that's fairly informal. There hasn't been a kind of formal feedback session. That's just as members as fed back about the issues that they want.
Yeah, that's my point. We haven't been asked for any formal feedback. I haven't missed something there. No, okay. And sorry, going back to Joe's point about the 31st of January, was that for this current financial year, or are we talking about a rule for next year?
All changes are from next. Sorry, Councillor.
Yes, sorry, I was talking about next year, because we're talking about the changes to the grant scheme for next year, next financial year. So this year would remain the same. But something I'd also like to pick up is the underspend. How will they be utilised in last year and this current year? Will they be rolled forward? And I think Councillor Trudy Mancini Boyle would like to comment.
Yes, thank you. I'm not particularly precious about when the cut-off date is, as long as members are totally aware of it. But with the underspend, I would prefer we look at the groups that have applied online and go back and look at those. If they then get referred to the member of that ward, fine. But I think if you cut it up, if you only give members another month to spend the excess pot, that's quite a short period of time. Whereas if you look at the applications that have come in online from communities that are in need, and we can look at, or the team can look at the most worthy. So that would be my preference.
Yes, I agree with Councillor Mancini Boyle. That is a very good option. So if we could have a cut-off point and then open it up to community groups who wish to apply online, and I'm sure the ward members will help these groups do that. Kerry, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I was just going to clarify and just check something. So are members comfortable with the idea that throughout the year, community groups could put their details online to go straight to the member, and if it makes life easier for members, where they reach their £500 limit and they receive additional contact, we could keep a list of those to be utilised after the 31st of December, if that's happy for Tom. Yeah.
Yes, I think that's very prudent. So if we go back to, oh yes, Trudy said perfect, great. So if we go back to the recommendations, we are happy for changes to the member-led ward grant scheme, and the grant pot will not exceed the 23,500 per annum. Any underspends should be rolled up for the following year or be offered online to community groups. So we'll go with that as a recommendation. We're happy with the introduction of the startup grant, which is linked to the new Community at Heart lottery, and that will be 10% of the lottery funds to enable that grant pot. And we would like to go forward with the development of a whole council approach to community funding. So if I propose that, could I have a seconder on that, please?
I'll second, Joe.
Sorry, could I have some clarity, please?
Sorry, who was that? Was that
Sue?
Sue.
Catchpole.
Hello, Sue. Right.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just want to be absolutely clear on the per member amount. We're talking 21-22, and we're talking about £500 per member, not a pot. from which a member can draw up to 1,000. At the moment, we're talking about 500 per member up until that cut-off date. Okay.
We are Councillor Catchpole, and the whole grant pot will not exceed 23,500. Mike, do you want to comment?
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of points, just for clarification for me. We had a couple of dates there, and I was just interested to know the 31st of December was mentioned, 31st of January, and was there any particular preference? I mean, I'm hoping the underspend will be very small by the time we get there, but just to kind of allow that. The cut-off point is the 1st of March. That's really helpful for officers, because then that gives 4 weeks just to clear the finance stuff. So just a comment there really would be useful.
I think, as I previously said, probably the 31st of January, and that will give a clear month for any underspends to be offered online to community groups. So we've got the recommendation. Trudy Mancini Boyle has seconded it. Sorry, who's coming in? Is that Councillor Beadle?
Stuart here.
Okay, Stuart.
Just to clarify what you're proposing, is it just strictly the wording as on the recommendation on the paper? Because it says changes to the member-led ward system. So presumably the changes which have been suggested are only the changes which have been discussed tonight, not any other changes.
No, changes that have been discussed tonight, as we have stated, which will be in the minutes. So we've got the recommendation, we've got the seconder. Can we go?
Sorry, I just need to come in again. Sorry,
is that Councillor Catchpole?
Yes, please. Yeah. I'm baffled as to why we need to include in this recommendation this evening that there shall not be a budget any more than 23,500. Surely we can recommend that there should be a minimum budget of 23,500, but I don't understand why we would keep it limited to that until it's gone through all of the committees and the budget stages, at which point we could then decide if 500 was, given financial situation, a good idea to put in the budget. But I'm loath to say a maximum of 23.5. I'd rather say a minimum of £500 per councillor, which equals 23.5.
Thank you, Councillor Catchpole. I think we've kicked this about for quite a while now. Councillor Trudy Mancini Boyle, the finance portfolio holder, would you like to come in?
Yeah, just to say, surely if we're going to look at increasing the budget, then that will go the normal route. It will go ONS, Cabinet. So ONS could make a recommendation to Cabinet, Cabinet could then consider it, and so on. So, but I don't think it's for this panel to consider that personally.
Thank you, Councillor Mancini Boyle. As you all know, the Economic Success Panel is only an advisory panel. So at the moment, we'll go with the recommendation and vote on that as we have discussed. Dawn, can you, do we need a roll call, or will a show of hands be sufficient, please?
There's not too many members, Chairman. Would you be happy for me to do a quick roll call?
Yes, of course, yes.
For avoidance of any doubt. So
yep,
subject to those minor tweaks that you've mentioned, we're looking at the recommendations in the report, and we have a proposer and a seconder. So if you could indicate if you are for or against making those recommendations to Cabinet. Let's go with Councillor Beadle.
For.
Councillor Bullman.
For, on the assumption that the amendments which were put forward are to be included.
Agreed, yeah.
Councillor Catchpole.
Against. We should have a minimum of 23.5, not a maximum.
Councillor Copplestone.
For.
Councillor Crotch.
For.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
For.
Okay, Chairman, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members voting for, 1 against, so that's carried.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Dawn. That was very kind. The next meeting of the Economic Success Panel is in the diary for the 7th of December at 6 p.m. I think that's a Monday evening. There's several things that we can consider. The Kickstart scheme, the Norfolk Strategic Fund, probably Howland Plantation, and possibly Interreg funding for the Bure Valley Railway. If there's anything else anyone would like on the work programme? No? Okay, lovely. I'd just like to thank the communities team, and thank you for that, Trudy, for reminding me. It's a great report, and thank you for